What's going on, guys? We got a special treat for you here today. Myself and my best friend, John, wanted to talk to you guys this month a little bit about toys. We know that being cooped up during this pandemic has got everybody searching for ways out, right? What are those? Those are our motorcycles, our boats, and our RVs. And I wanted to let John, the expert in those fields, just kind of talk to you a little bit about it to open up the conversation. John, when we talk about insuring our summer toys, what types of things are we talking about?
So, Mark, there are going to be a lot of the things that you touched on. They're going to be our motorcycles, our dirt bikes, our ATVs, our UTVs, our boats, our jet skis, and either our pull-behind camper or our RV.
All those things that are fun to ride but expensive to maintain. Well, when we're talking about all these fun toys, what kind of coverages stick out in your mind are most important?
Well, the coverages for these kind of things, the base skeleton coverage, pretty much break into two categories. You have your liability and your medical payments, and that's going to cover in the case that there is an accident, we're either able to take care of yourselves and your needs, and that's the medical payment side, or there's a liability side, which means that if you're responsible, we'll take care of their medical payments and the property that needs to be repaired there. And then there's the physical damage and theft portion, which were to say that if we needed to fix your motorcycle, UTV, or RV, we could. Or, as we know, motorcycles, four-wheelers, and UTVs are hot items to be stolen, also the theft aspect. So we have things covered for when accidents happen to both take care of injuries and get vehicles repaired.
Perfect. Awesome. So I know we always say, hey, not all policies are created equal, right? But kind of what makes this unique? Are all toy policies the same?
So they're all built on the same skeleton. The things that we talked about, the liability, the medical payments, the physical damage, and the theft. But that's where they end. One of the things that we have here that we specialize in is specific riders to your policy based on how you want to use it. Everyone uses their motorcycle differently. Everyone uses their boat differently. And based on how you use this toy should dictate what kind of coverages you have. For example, there's a difference between somebody that gets on a motorcycle for a Sunday drive and never leaves Sangamon County and somebody that would get on a motorcycle with their spouse and take off down to Alabama. Those drivers that are taking off and going on these long road trips, if there was something to happen to them and they were so many miles away from home, there are coverages that they can elect to take to make sure that they're not stranded while we're trying to get the bike fixed if it even is repairable. We have people that buy motorcycles and they like to keep the base model and like to keep it simple, but then we have some of our more hardcore folks and they like all the aftermarket and they like the chrome and they like to make sure it's loud, and all of those special aftermarket parts, if you don't have the right policy, can be depreciated at a time of loss. And so there's specific endorsements we can add for those kind of folks. If you're really into fishing tournaments, if you can see a bass coming from a mile away and you're going to cash in on those things and you're taking off to maybe Lake Shelbyville, and on your way there, you get into an accident and your boat has a hole in it and it can't be placed in the tournament, we have ways that we can get you a replacement boat or even those fishing policy fees reimbursed to you. So there's all sorts of different ways, depending on how you're going to use these items, that we can customize to have the right coverage for you. Or if you are simply using it like every other average type, to make sure that we have the right coverage for you, but you're not overpaying for it. One of the things our carriers know is it's Illinois, right? You're not getting the jet ski out in February. You're not hitting the motorcycle on Christmas Eve, most likely. Yeah. And so the rating on these things is designed to say, we understand you only get somewhere between 4 to 6 months on using these policies, so we can make them as affordable for you, and you can have the right coverage without dipping into your vacation fund this summer.
Nice. Well, John, so I know that us having a claims background, right? We've seen it all, and that's why these coverages stand out to us so much. But I remember a question I always got, and unfortunately a few claims I had to adjust. What about our friends with land, right? The ones that say, well, I never take my my ATV or UTV, on the road. I only drive it, on my property. Do they still need coverage?
Yeah, so that's always very difficult for most people. The bank's not forcing you to take a policy because there's not a loan. You're not putting it on the public roadway, so the government's not forcing you to have liability. But one of the things that you should always remember is these people that typically force you to have coverage know something, right? They're successful institutions, and what they know is when you take a vehicle like a four-wheeler, which can go anywhere from 40 to 60 miles an hour, and you're driving through trails and you're driving through backwoods, you're not driving on a smooth pavement. You're dealing with squirrels, rabbits, deer, you're dealing with tree roots, you're dealing with potholes, you're dealing with slick spots. And even for a very experienced rider, very quickly, bad things can happen. There's no seat belt on a typical four-wheeler, right? There's no seat belts, there's no roll bar. They can get rolled, they can get flipped. And when that happens, it's very important to make sure you have the right coverages that can make sure that you're taken care of. If you're injured, the right coverages that can take care of if you have a rider and they get injured. The biggest and the saddest claims that come from this are youthful operators, are somewhere between the age of 12 and 17-year-old driver that hops on one of these with his friends, and they get into an accident. And one of the things that, if this is your scenario and you have land and they're doing this kind of riding and you have people coming onto your property, that you need to think about is when the parents have their injured child, lawsuits happen. And if it's a prolonged thing and it's something more than maybe a broken bone, and there's multiple visits and chiropractic things, somebody will be paying for that. And your insurance policy is designed to pick that up. But if you elect to save money and not take the coverages that have your bodily injury liability and your medical payments, that will be you. And there's just such a high likelihood that driving these types of vehicles in this type of environment, crashes will happen, injuries will happen. And so in those scenarios, more than a lot of them, it's very important to make sure you still maintain a policy, even though no one's forcing you to do so.
Yeah, man. I mean, gone are the days where, boys will be boys, kids will be kids, and, you got hurt and you got up, you dusted it off, and, inevitably your parents told you, you know what, you probably shouldn't have been on there anyway. Now it's everybody's too happy, and it's crazy. It's very unfortunate. Speaking of that, right? So what if I have a couple of adult beverages, right? And, I'm taking, we're out with some friends, we're tubing, we're skiing. What am I liable for if something happens?
So the short answer to that, Mark, is you could be liable for everything. We walk a fine line in insurance. We want you guys to go out and we want you to have fun. We want you to be able to get on the boat and do the tubing and do the skiing. But the reality is that anything can happen, and that if somebody wanted to have a lawsuit, nothing stops them from doing it. Nothing, whether or not it was that they overindulged or they did something stupid. If they're on your boat or a piece of your equipment out on the waterways and something happens, they have the ability to take you to court to try to see if they can get money out of you. The question we tell our watercraft owners to ask themselves is, when that lawsuit comes, do you want to pay out of pocket for lawyers, legal fees, time off work? Do you want to research who are the people that can best defend you against a frivolous lawsuit? Or do you want your insurance carrier to do that? If you have a basic bodily injury, liability, and medical payments policy with the right coverages on your boat, your insurance carrier will pay for all those frivolous lawsuit fees that come up. And at that point in time, you have the best chance of winning your lawsuit and make sure there's not a judgment against you. So I could sit here and I could tell you today some ways that courts have ruled, but as you and I both know, Mark, that changes. It depends on the judge you get, depends on the jury you get. It can depend on the county you're in, it can depend on the time of year, and there's so many things that go into it. Really, the only thing you can do to protect yourself is make sure you have the right policy that will pay for all the fees that come out if something does in fact happen.
Definitely, all good points, man. So to wrap this up, what am I forgetting here? What are some final thoughts that you have for all of our viewers?
Yeah. So the big thing when we're talking about toys, which can be a little more dangerous, and I'm thinking right now specifically more to the motorcycle folks. We see the signs, start seeing motorcycles, and we want people to do that. Please be aware that they're going to be out there. But the other thing is, right now, you may not know it, 30% of the automobiles on the road right now do not have insurance. They're driven by uninsured drivers. Most uninsured drivers aren't great drivers. And what's happened is they've gotten into some accidents, they've gotten into some fender benders, their rates have skyrocketed, they're not able to afford them, and so that they continue to drive around. So we take the worst possible drivers that we have no protection for them if they hit you, and you can be the best motorcycle driver there is. You can be reactive with it, but a distracted, bad driver can cremate you at any moment. And what we want to make sure are two things. Your disability insurance needs to be in place if you're going to get on a motorcycle. Too many things can happen, and we need to make sure that your family is taken care of. And if your life insurance is either not in place or has not been reviewed recently, we need to have a talk about those things. I know you've probably got on a motorcycle 1,000 times and got home 1,000 times, but the reality is the number is in the thousands for the number of people in Illinois that got on a motorcycle and never got home. And while that's a tragedy, what we can do is we can use life insurance to take care of the money problems so that your family financially can continue on if that does happen for you. And so that's something that we really want to stress to make sure that you're protected. And sometimes, Mark, I know you feel this way too. It's not fun to talk about these things. But if we're prepared and we educate ourselves for what it is, we do the best chance to not only take care of ourselves, but to make sure our families are taken care of. And once the insurance is in place, go out and have good, responsible, clean fun.
Awesome. Well, John, thanks so much for taking the time to go over with our clients, our viewers, right, our friends, our family, these very important tips. Guys, we're going to continue our mission here to love our community through protection and education, and that means coming at you guys with all these tips. So if you have any questions at all, definitely reach out to us. We'd love nothing more to make sure you guys are safe and sound out there on the road. Thanks, guys.
Family Insurance.